So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and honour to invite Mr. Huang, whom I've given some idea of his background in my opening remarks, to address this conference. Thank you very much, Mr. Huang.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very honored to be able to be here today to share with everyone my views on the future of China's agricultural sector. I would like to talk about three issues. The first is yesterday, today, and the future of Chinese agriculture. The second is to share with you what are the fundamental changes in the world that have made agriculture enter a new era. And the third issue is that in this new era, China's agriculture and agricultural cooperation with the European Union and China, between the European Union and China. On this chart, you can see Chinese food production per capita. So that means that from then to today we've been through three phases. The first was Red China, so 1949, before 1949. China was in chaos and war, and so agriculture, the situation of agriculture at the time, meant that only a few people could have enough food, a few people would starve, and a number of people did not have enough to eat. The 30 years before 1979 were a period where China had a collective agricultural production, and so all the land was in the hands of the state, of the collective. And during this phase there was a target that the urban population, the rural population, were no longer starving. However, in those 30 years, production was 300 kilos, below 300 kilos. So that means that overall people did not really have enough to eat. I was born in 45, so I remember the hunger at the time. So collective ownership did reduce the disparity between countryside and city, and meant that a lot of people were no longer dying from hunger, but the cereals and food production was not enough to provide for the population and allow everyone to eat and leave their meal on a full stomach. So I was involved in that process of redistribution of land to farmers, and that meant that agriculture was no longer able to meet the demands, the needs of the population, and that led to reforms and land reform. So farmers, when they got the land, were then motivated to produce. So from 1980 onwards, production increased steadily. So that means the first agricultural reform to this date has basically solved the issue of hunger. And that means that the Chinese people will no longer be hungry. And that's one of the main results of our reforms. However, 30 years on, there were some other problems. Because land was distributed to different households, and each household was a farm, that meant that one family only had 10 mu of land. 2 acres, a farm of 2 acres, is so small that it cannot produce enough food and cannot incorporate modernization and other tools to produce enough food. So even though land was distributed to different families and motivated farmers to produce and allowed these farmers to solve their food issues, the efficiency was very low and production costs were very high. So with reforms and China entering the WTO, and China has already become a market economy, and the marketization of China's agriculture is already underway. But there's a huge disparity in terms of cost. So in other words, the cost of food is much higher than in other countries. So in that kind of market environment, it's very difficult to stop foreign products entering China. So we've got a very strange situation in China now. On the one hand, there's so much food in China that there's not enough place to store it, but at the same time, soybean and other food products are being imported from other countries. Why is it that when China is producing enough food for its consumers, it's still importing food? Because of the market forces, because of the price factor. Any country that relies on subsidies for agricultural products will all face the test of the market. And at the same time, because of the situation now, the quality of the products, quality of the food that's produced is very different in different parts. And processing and food processing companies hope that the products that they get will be of the same quality. So they'd rather spend more money and buy better quality products from abroad and then process the products in their companies. So agricultural issues in China at the moment are not in terms of production, but rather the fact that there are households which are working on very small plots of land and that the products aren't competitive in the international market. So we have several problems now. The first problem is that those who are producing products are those who are poorest in society, because their products and the quality of those products cannot compete with international products. So when they have low income and they become the poorest in society, they obviously go and look for a better life. And that has led, in this process of urbanization in China, you have a lot of migrant workers coming from the countryside to the city. In the past there were villages with lots of people, and a lot of these villages have been abandoned. because farmers can no longer get enough income from the land that they're working on. And so in the production chain, they leave the villages and go to the cities. So the low income of farmers has now transformed into a problem in the countryside. Those who stayed in the countryside are mostly children and older people, and the young, strong working people have moved to the cities, and that has led to a huge problem in terms of China's agriculture. Huge changes have occurred in agriculture in China, but problems in agriculture continue to be very serious indeed. So what can we do about it? Through government subsidies to solve it is the age-old way of doing it, which is to reform the countryside. And this reform covers two aspects. The first one is to get that land in the hands of households and bring it together. There are different ways to do this. For example, in the past you couldn't sell and buy land, but through selling and buying land you can increase the size of the land that's being tilled, and of course in a situation where the income you get from the land and the size of the land there's a disparity between these two, and that leads to a problem. So a lot of people have sold their land and then gone to the cities, but that's probably not a very good way to do it. So the best way to do it would be to keep ownership in the hands of households in the agriculture. Of course, the ownership itself is in the hands of the state, but the right to use that land is in the hands of the households. So by pooling the use of the land, or what we call cooperatives, that means that the right to use the land is still in the hands of the households, but you've pooled the land and the resources together, and that's now in the pilot phase. We're trying it at the moment, so that will be a very important part of the next reforms in agriculture in China. Once you've pooled those resources, you can then use modern tools, modern machinery, etc. The second issue is what kind of organization method would be the best to efficiently use the land and use modern methods and production methods to be used on farms and allow Chinese products to increase in terms of their quality and reduce their costs. So that's the key. First step of this is to pool resources, and the second is the use of science and technology to modernize agriculture. So let's imagine the farmer gives the land to the cooperative and then gives
then the cooperative give the operation to a platform. In the villages, there are several platforms formed, and the land will be managed by this common platform. And the common platform have a very high expertise. And so what the platforms facing, it are facing the competitive or professional companies like providing the fertilizer and specialist companies in the farming field. So such companies will work on the basis of platform, and such companies can help and provide services for the land. Then we could then concentrate, can pool the running and managing of the land together, and then introduce a more professional company to run it. By such a pooling system, we can modernize agriculture and bring it up to a higher standard. This could be the future for Chinese agriculture. So what is our future like? We think the agriculture in the future will probably entering into a ideal agriculture and ideal economics, and we have some new concepts for such new economics. Because for the conventionally, we treat agriculture, mining, manufacturing, all the manufacturing's produced products as a production. Apart from productions, we call everything else services. So this is a mistake in the concept. The fact is, in nowadays in the world, there are three kinds of products. The first one is what we are familiar with, is material goods produced by manufacturing, by agriculture and by mining. But apart from this kind of product, is not everything else is services, or not majority is services. For example, how about software, filming? How about services from the doctors? They are not services, because it does not just need the attitude of a good service, but it's the expertise. What we are buying is the expertise of the doctor, not the smiling face of the doctor. So we could say in this world, apart from material goods, a lot of what we call service is actually what we call idea product. Then material goods today are no longer the material goods as we know. Our material goods are more and more like what we call combined products. What does this mean? It's a combination of material goods and a concept. For example, Armani, outfit made by Armani. It consists of the cloth. There is the material goods. But Armani is a brand, and it's an ideal product. And the brand and the design are the idea. So a suit is made of the material goods, the brand, the design. It's a combined luxury goods. Now, let's look at, in this world, there are fundamental changes. The material goods production, it's shrinking. It's only a small part of the production. Mining, manufacturing, agriculture only account for a third of the total productivity. What makes up of the other 2/3? It has now transferred as idea product. When a society moves from agriculture to industry society, this means the population in agriculture is only a minority, and the value created by agriculture is only a small part. Now, about 70% of the population and 70% of the value has already changed to ideal products. So we could say our world has already transformed from industrial society to idea society, because our time has changed, our society have changed, then what we will see, because we'll see the social management and the social structure will have fundamental change. The economics we're familiar with and our analysis on the goods and services and our definition on management and our policy setting have all been fundamentally changed. Let's look at what are the changes. Firstly, when learning economics, there is a basic principle, is the total competitive market, which suggests when can economics plays a role? It's in the total market economy. But I can say that a total competitive market no longer exists because 70% of the idea products are unique. For example, you write a novel, it has to be original. When you design a suit, it has to be your own copy. Any idea product has its own uniqueness. In economics, anything with unique selling point or unique production, they are no longer part of the total competitive market, which means 70% of what we call service is no longer fit the total competitive market. So 30% of that are products can be made, but the other 70% are the added value with your ideas, with your designs. So even if they look like material goods, but they are no longer product fits into the concept of total competitive market. So we could say like oil. Oil, is it a total competitive product? Is it no longer that kind of product? And oil market is no longer a total competitive market. Therefore, the traditional economics can only work in the new concept, and it can no longer work under the new definitions. So how about some of those concepts and regulation and principles that used to work in the economics no longer work? As we know that, for example, when you eat the fourth bread, it will be less effective than the first three breads. When you are watching opera, when you watch it for the 1000th time, it's of a higher value than when you watch it for the first time. This is an economic principle. It's a rise in it's a marginal rise, increase in value. It's a marginal increase in value. The marginal value, when it's zero, when you have invented something, when you copy this new product, the value is zero. Its marginal value has decreased and it becomes zero. When manufacturing like airplane, so the first airplane costs a lot, and then the second, the third, and the fourth will just gradually decrease on its cost, because the first airplane cost, a lot of it comes with the design and the concept. When you copy a concept or the design, it costs nothing to copy them. So in those 70% of the ideal products, the margin cost no longer rise. When you keep copying the same thing, the margin cost becomes zero. then we will also see the curved lines of ideal product and material goods crosses. For example, before you produce a film, you have no idea how much it can fetch. You don't know what value, how much money it will bring. So when the marginal value becomes zero, we cannot find the benchmark. So how do you set the price for ideal product? I can say that the price for the ideal product is not the only one. It's very much decided by the policy, by the principle, like a manufacturer of a software decides what he or she wants to produce. We always think value is created by the producers. In the case of a film, how much will this film be worth depends on how much consumption goes into it. So the value of a film is created by both the producer and the consumer. I have lots of essays on such ideal economics. Perhaps you will have chance to read them, and I hope next year I can produce a book on ideal economics. This is for me to describe what the future agriculture should be like. I think future agriculture should be like ideal agriculture. That's how the Chinese agriculture is heading toward. In this world, in Europe, in the world economy, China, USA are still doing okay, but Europe has run into problems. What are the problems you're running into? When the material production gets into a certain level, you can no longer increase that. So, like in USA, they quickly changed to ideal agriculture. Same does China. But in Europe, particularly some of the European countries, did not develop its ideal production when its industry declined. So, which has caused some of the people feel left behind. Even when some of the industries declined in China, we do not see people feeling left behind because ideal industry has absorbed a lot of that excessive labor. Ideal agriculture will fundamentally change our agriculture. So if we only just want to think about how to produce more, how to expand the market, that is a dead end. But with the ideal agriculture, it will become a very wealthy, very well-grown, healthy industry. For example, a friend of mine called Richard Robert, he is a Nobel Prize winner. He was studying researching on a banana and a kind of grain. Not only can produce a lot in Africa, when Africans have eaten such food, it has eliminated a common disease in Africa. So Chinese scientists are also researching on grains that high quality, a much better rice, which can reduce cholesterol in so agriculture no longer produce food. It will become a health care industry because of the knowledge input. Agriculture in the future should also become a leisure industry like Provence in France. It's all because of the income generated by such industry. It can also become an environmental friendly industry. Not only sweet corn can become alcohol, and the stem of the coin can also become alcohol. So the cost for using coin will be reduced to so low that it will cost less to use coin to replace oil. So in agriculture, we can no longer focus just on food and grains. We need to think about how agriculture can bring new concept and new idea product. I think there is so much room for China and Europe to work together. When Chinese people get rich, it will like things like European wine and olive oil, and it will create a lot of demand in Chinese market. Something like wine is not just wine. It's not just a kind of alcohol, a drink. It is the symbol of European culture. Europe has a very long culture, and there is such a joke. And how can I manage a country like France? This is a king was wondering. So many different kind of cheese. How can I manage the country? So many different kind of cheese. So once Chinese people can like cheese, then there is a huge market. When we only focus agriculture on grain, then there is only one way for us to go. We're heading to a dead end. But if we think about it as ideal product, then the future is bright and the future is enormous and with lots of potential.